It makes me a victor. It makes me a survivor. And for anybody who is suffering, I wish you survival. I wish you strength. And I feel you. I feel you, sis, because it's hard. This was hard. And I'm grateful to be back. Not just here on YouTube, but just back. I am back. It's been a while since I've been on here because I've been dealing with health issues, significant ones actually, and I wanted to spread awareness. I'm somebody who is usually quite private, especially about things involving health and personal issues, but there is so much privacy around this issue that I think the more I'm able to amplify it, the better, and it could help somebody. And that issue that I'm referring to is uterine fibroids. So I'm somebody who's had fibroids or known that I have fibroids since the year 2014. I found out when going to the doctor to get an ultrasound because I had an umbilical hernia, which is a hernia that's inside of your belly button. And during that time, I found out I had about 6 or 7 fibroids as well as an ovarian cyst.
A uterine fibroid is a benign tumor that grows within or near the uterus. It's quite prevalent. Up to 80% of women will have a diagnosis of uterine fibroids throughout their lifetime. Fibroids can cause lots of issues, most common being bleeding. It's the most common reason for a problem office visit to the gynecologist or provider. Fibroids can differ in size, ranging from the size of a pea or apple seed to watermelons. It's unusual to be able to determine the degree of symptomatology based on the size, because the pea-sized fibroid, if it's located in a strategic position, will cause excessive bleeding versus the larger watermelon-sized fibroid, which may have a patient present with no symptoms at all. There is no exact cause for uterine fibroids.
Fibroids are something that plague a lot of Black women. Most Black women who I've met, when I mention uterine fibroids to them, they either have fibroids themselves or they know someone who has fibroids. And fibroids are essentially benign tumors that can grow in a uterus. I've recently found out can also grow in the breast, but they can cause issues because they can sometimes push up against other organs and cause pain. They could also cause someone's stomach to look larger than it actually is. So there are some folks who have fibroids and they might look 3 months pregnant, but really it's all the tumors that are making their stomach look distended. You know, there's always the joke of, at least when I was growing up, I'm older, but I don't know if this is a term anymore, but of a pooch, a girl having a pooch, or I guess now it's called a fupa, which y'all look that up on Urban Dictionary. But a lot of times that extra pooch or fupa is there because of fibroids. And I definitely had that going on. And what I also had going on was extremely heavy menstrual cycles. Extremely heavy menstrual cycles. And it's something I've dealt with any time of my life where I'm not on birth control. And my menstrual cycles got awful this year. I can honestly say that in the year 2022, I have had more days where I am bleeding than when I'm not. So it became a serious issue at the start of the summer, and I went to the doctor to find out, hey, what's going on? And I was put on, different hormones. We looked at my fibroids. They didn't seem to have grown more. In fact, they did shrink, and I have less fibroids than I did back then. But the ones that I did have were causing my periods to be awful. So 2 months ago, I got 2 fibroids taken out.
So yeah, getting my fibroid removed this morning. So I'm just praying everything goes well. I think it will. It is well with my soul. So that's what's going on. I just want to be able to remember this moment for myself.
And the issues still didn't slow down or stop. I was still bleeding all the time. All the time. That bleeding ruined 2 vacations for me. It made me self-conscious going out into public. I was always paranoid, like, do I smell like blood? Am I walking around smelling like blood and no one's telling me? Like, it caused a lot of damage to my psyche. And it also interrupted a lot of important moments because I spent so much time always in the restroom attending to my period. So I got 2 fibroids removed 2 months ago. The bleeding didn't slow down. I was still bleeding all the time. And literally all the time, y'all. So my period would happen. It would last probably 11 to 14 days. I would get 1 to 7 days of a break and it would come right back. It's just something I dealt with for quite a while until I had my second fibroid surgery, which was a couple of weeks ago. And 2 more fibroids were removed and I have not bled since. Yes, we thank God. I thank God for that because, oh my Lord, this has been such a challenging year. It has impacted so much for me. But I finally feel like, for lack of a better word, I'm healed. You know, like those last 2 fibroids, there's something about getting those taken out that I feel different. I look different, like my skin cleared up all over again, and I'm someone who normally deals with hormonal acne, and I realized that's because my hormones have been out of whack for a long time, and fibroids can affect that. It's important to get checked out. You know, if you are someone who has access to health insurance, make sure that you're getting your annual exams, that you're getting your physicals, that you're staying on top of things, because there's a fine line between something being an inconvenience and something just straight up interrupting your life. And I walked that tightrope for a long time, and it finally disrupted my life enough that I had to do something about it. Recovering from surgery is challenging, and I am learning to accept my limitations and to ask for help. You know, there's just beautiful things that I learned from this experience, and I'm not always somebody who likes to find the silver lining for things, especially when they're traumatic, because sometimes there is no silver lining, but I can say that there is silver lining in this situation for me. It caused me to be more on top of what's going on in my body, to be more of an advocate for myself when it comes to my health. You know, I had one doctor the doctor who performed my first surgery. She's great. I like her a lot, but when I was still bleeding, it felt like she wasn't treating my situation as urgently as I felt it was. So I saw another doctor in the same practice, and that doctor did treat it as urgent and recommended that I have that second surgery. So being an advocate for myself is something that I definitely learned. I also learned that I have people in my life who really love me and who want to do things to support me. And I knew that already, but this is the first time where I actually leaned into that love and asked for help and asked for support, even from my husband. Normally, I'm somebody who we joke that I act like a single mom all the time, like try to just take on everything, or I'm the woman who will grab like 50 million things and try to be walking up the steps instead of just like ask for help. So I only have to take one trip. So this experience taught me to ask for help more often, and each time I asked for help, I got it. And how much easier is that, you know, to have people in your life who support you and love you. My best friend brought us dinner the night of my surgery. She didn't have to do that, but the fact that I called her and was leaning on her emotionally about this situation instead of keeping it to myself allowed the room for her to figure out what is a way that I could help her. So I love that for me. Stepping away from unnecessary obligations is a form of self-care. What do I mean by that? I mean that sometimes we have promised things to people and we can't deliver. And to take care of oneself, it's okay to come back and say, hey, I know I said I could do that thing, but I can't do it anymore. For me, that thing was work. And I'm gonna preface this with I am privileged when it comes to that. I'm privileged to have a job that's very flexible, to have a job that has a lot of leave, a lot of sick leave. So I was able to take off work before my last surgery. And in those days of taking off work, I worked through all the emotions and the grief that I was having over feeling like my body was failing me. There were some days where I just laid on the couch and cried. I meditated. I listened to music. I binge watched movies. Like, I did what I needed to do to take that time to heal. And I'm somebody who normally is not great with idle time and will usually find something to fill my time when my time is idle. And lately, that idle time that I've had has been filled with social media content creation, like what I'm doing right now. But I didn't have the energy for that. I didn't have the energy to get on camera. I didn't want to be on camera. I didn't want to be talking or showing up inauthentically in any space that I was in. So it was best to remove myself. And I'm so glad I did. Because by the time I reached the day of my surgery, guess who was feeling great? Guess who wasn't worried? And I think had I not taken that time for myself, I would have been in a whole different state than what I ended up being in. And lastly, that I am not alone. I'm not alone. There are so many women, not just Black women, who I've talked to about my fibroids, who also have fibroids and who have shared their stories with me. And there's so many stories online. You know, just even the experience of having periods that are that heavy. It's not something that one speaks about just freely. It's not dinner conversation, in my opinion. But there are so many women who I've spoken to. Even my neighbor, who's an older woman, retired across the street, could relate to me, you know, and say, oh yeah, I remember those days. For me, the times where I've felt the most depressed is when I feel like I'm suffering alone. So the fact that in this situation with dealing with uterine fibroids, with dealing with heavy irregular periods, that I could look to my left and right and see Black women who are saying, sis, I understand you, just meant the world to me. It meant the world. Things that have helped me manage my fibroid situation: writing. Y'all know I'm a writer. That's what I share on this channel primarily. I wrote a poem during this time that was really hard, and I questioned if I wanted to share it or not share it. It felt too personal. It felt too graphic. I'm not usually one who's speaking about my vagina on social media, especially Instagram. But I recorded myself reciting that poem, and I'm going to put it right here just so you all can see the poem here. 3 showers after my last fibroid removal, my vagina still smelled clinical. Like freshly opened Caucasian flesh-colored Band-Aids with barely a whiff of ordinarily sweet. Scent is connected to memory. If I can't smell myself, is she who I knew her to be, or a sterilized version of me? 2 months ago, before my last fibroid surgery, a woman who survived a similar journey told me to expect to feel a little insecure, like something was missing because I would be waking up without property that belonged to me. Today, I feel it. The unfurnished cavern called uterus. The groaning echoes of benign growths that stifled my own. An empty home. It was freeing to share that. It was freeing to get those thoughts out. And just the comments on that post that I put on Instagram is telling that people need to hear stories. And yes, I definitely believe in maintaining one's business and not putting all your business out in the streets. But some business is okay to share because somebody might gain something from hearing your story. And that's what I walked away with. You know, so even if one person who watches this video who has fibroids gets any information or encouragement from this, I can say for sure it's just a season. It doesn't have to be your whole life. It doesn't have to be, because even though it felt like a permanent situation and it felt hopeless for me, it wasn't, and I'm better, and I thank God. I thank God for that. So just wanted to share my story with you all. Comment below if you are somebody who has fibroids or has known somebody who has fibroids. Feel free to share your story in the comments. The more we share our stories, the more power we have over them. We have the power to define our stories. And even in me speaking of this journey, when I first started talking about it, it was definitely from a victim perspective, because I felt like a victim. I felt like, why me? Why am I dealing with all of this? Why is this happening in my life? But reframing that story to be one of, wow, a lot of people love me, and I have a huge support system, and thank God I have access to healthcare, and my job is so good. They let me take off 6 days, just impromptu. Like, all those things are part of the story, and reframing the story in that way does not make me a victim anymore. It makes me a victor. It makes me a survivor. And for anybody who is suffering, I wish you survival. I wish you strength, and I feel you. I feel you, sis, because it's hard. This was hard, and I'm grateful to be back. Not just here on YouTube, but just back. I am back. So Thank you all for watching. Take care. Bye.